All right, we're just a few minutes out, and this is going to be recorded for those that have to drop off or couldn't make it today, of course. So we'll have that available for everyone. All right, everyone, I've got 12 right on the dot. We've got lots to cover today, and so I'm looking forward to chatting with you all. We've got lots to cover, lots of different slides. So if we don't get a chance for the Q&A at the end, I invite you to please reach out. Let's have a more intense conversation after this if you have any questions that you want to do some deep dives on. Once we're done with the presentation, we'll see if we have enough time for questions. Otherwise, go ahead and add it at the chat and I'll be able to get back to you. And yes, this is being recorded so that other folks that aren't able to make it or who are late to the game can definitely go back and see this. And then it will be posted on our new YouTube channel as well, as we'll have many more of these during the week related to federal contracting, related to leadership and organizational cultural development. All right, so let's go ahead and share my screen here so that you all can see here the good stuff. I'm like across different screens here, so bear with me. Okay, wonderful. All right, so good afternoon, everyone. If we haven't met, I'm Monica Delaney Taryn. I'm the CEO and founder of Mivia Leadership. And today we're going to be doing a super deep dive into proactive strategies to help navigate the evolving federal contracting landscape, ensuring your organization's success amidst, of course, the recent reforms and policy shifts. We're still very, very raw in the last months of these changes. So, very much a necessary discussion to continue to have, right? Like I mentioned, we've got lots to cover. So our discussion will include, of course, the federal contracting environment, impacts of these recent changes. So we're going to do level setting, strategies to protect existing contracts, and innovative approaches to also help scale that growth. We'll talk about proposal strategies that align with new priorities, an immediate action plan to help support. And actually, I wanted to be a little bit more of a like participation piece, but maybe we'll hold that off for another time if we can't get through all the slides. But also resources, of course, to support your efforts. And then if we have time, we'll do the Q&A here via the chat. So this session is designed to equip you federal contractors with tools and insights needed to adapt to significant changes like we're seeing today, including the executive orders, the procurement centralization under GSA that we're going to talk about a bit, and then the ongoing influence, of course, of the Department of Government Efficiency, which is DOGE. And our goal is to help you be proactive and protect your contracts, refine your business development strategies, and optimize your proposals to remain competitive in this market today that now is the new today, 2025, and of course beyond. So this session is designed to equip federal contractors with the tools and insights needed to adapt to significant changes, including executive orders, procurement centralization under the GSA, of course, like we talked about, and all the ongoing department DOGE stuff that is happening. So our objective today is to kind of tackle all of that. With over 18 years of federal government experience, contracting experience, excuse me, I've supported many organizations ranging from very small businesses to Fortune 500 companies. I've contributed to over $7 billion in counting, of course, some contract wins, very proud of that. And it's probably more than that, but I kind of just it starts to get gray after many years. But my experience expands across various agencies, so I'm very well equipped to talk about what we're talking about today and see these changes happen over the last 18 years. Specifically, including, of course, DoD, supporting the IC federal civilian, and of course, NASA and space. I'm also a certified leadership coach, and I'm dedicated, to guiding professionals through these complexities of government contracting and other type of organizations. So the federal contracting landscape is undergoing significant transformation, right? The GSA is centralizing procurement for common goods, right? Services, managing approximately over $4 billion in contracts. The FAR is being overhauled, as we all know, to simplify and streamline acquisition process with hopes of that. And then DOGE, of course, continues to influence contract reviews and spending cuts, with agencies experiencing an increase in scrutiny. So let's level set. Let's take that moment to level set. I don't want to make any assumptions here with the audience and who's going to be looking at this post today's live stream. But most of you already know these big, shifts in this environment that it's happening. But it's important that we're all on the same page before we dig into these more practical solutions. So consider this like a quick refresher. So baselining, right? Key disruptions. First, of course, we've got DOGE, right? This is a new main driver. It will continue to be, right? We've got recent executive orders, procurement authority for like domestic common goods and services being consolidated also under GSA. And to date, of course, like I mentioned, $4 billion in contracts have already shifted under this pilot starting, with OMB, oh, excuse me, OMB, yes, SBA and OPM. But here's the ambiguity. Over half of the targeted contracts haven't moved yet. And so we're still seeing that. And also, of course, there's not a clear ceiling involved. Yeah, but the budget pressures continue and the delays on many of these recompetes, especially that don't necessarily align to the must-haves of today, are continuing to happen. So fiscal year 25 budget realities, more dollars are flowing to top priorities like defense infrastructure and emerging technologies, and less tolerance for like duplicative or nice to have programs. And we'll talk more about that. So what happens, right? Agencies pause solicitations, for DOGE review, we know that, reevaluating, of course, the scopes and pushing timelines out far to the right. We've been seeing that for months. This is why seeing RFP delayed and modified and quietly canceling altogether, which has been very disruptive for our industry. And then why, of course, we're level setting. So while none of this is probably news to most of you, and I don't want to spend any more too much time on this, but it's the backdrop for, everything that we're going to be having a conversation around today. So bottom line, right? Contracts being canceled, scope changes, delays in RFPs, new RFPs, awards with intentional pauses, right? So now we are called during these changes to make a pivot into, what this next new phase of federal government contracting looks like for us. So, of course, continue with the challenges and the changes in urgency, right? Simultaneously, the federal government environment is tightening in certain areas, and we know that through, the fiscal year budget report that we recently saw last month, which is emphasizing, like I said, in defense infrastructure and AI. As a result of these pauses, we've got to change our strategies. And so, from a contractor's perspective, this is creating, of course, a climate of confusion for a lot of us and our organizations, having to reshift our growth strategy, hopefully. We've seen examples where contracts were canceled, and, it's been very, hot and go here. But countries need to be more proactive. That's where we're called on today to do, right? We have to be both in defense and also being in proactive, working with contracting officers, right? Writing unsolicited white papers that tie contract outcomes to DOJ's efficiency goals, and planning more strategically now more than ever. So agility is key, not just for operations, but for strategy, for the relationships, for your proposal quality, right? The squeaky wheel gets the grease, but strategy wheel gets to win. So let's talk about the GSA centralization that is going on today and the wave. So it's not theoretical, right? It's rolled out, it's rolling out. Like I mentioned, there's been a GSA mass refresh. June of 2025 just came out. Right, this is a big one. And, the pricing schedules, the pricing terms, and new FAR updates are coming, new SINs for AI, resilience, and more. So check your catalog on that today. But what can we do if you don't have a schedule? Of course, apply today. That's the bottom line here, or at least apply yesterday. If you don't have it, get your mods submitted, right? If you wait until, this flurry comes, then you're going to be way behind. So although we're seeing this trend forward and will continue to, we need to put action forward if indeed you're not yet set up here in this area. This is incredibly pivotal for the success of your growth. So let's unpack what's now called, the FAR overhaul, the revolutionary FAR overhaul. RFO is what you're going to see here in the acronym. This goes far beyond, minor edits. It's a top-down rewrite shaping of what we're seeing in federal contracting, and how things will be bought and managed. In April, there was an executive order that was kicked out, of course, with these changes in specific parts of 134 and 52 that will sync up in this new upcoming phase. But here's the kicker. Agencies, don't have to wait. They might be implementing some of this. So they're using FAR deviations to kind of roll out these changes immediately. And so, although there's a draft today, it can be effective for your RFP tomorrow. So what you should do, of course, is stay close to the contracting officers, read these drafts, get very familiar with them. We can help support here at Mivia Leadership as well, to educate your team and get you set up for success with an intensive, specifically on the FAR. But comments are due before, of course, September 30th. So now is the time to take a look at that review. Of course, your proposal boilerplate, make sure it's not out to date and that there's good reference there. It's got to be clean, flexible, compliant, of course, ensuring that. So this ties directly into why many contracts are on hold and, of course, reshaping under GSA. So let's talk more about that. So, what does the RFO mean really on the ground? So, the contracts are on pause, right? Requirements are being issued. Agencies are rewriting these RFPs on the fly, which, surprise, surprise, you've been in industry for a while. A lot of these RFPs aren't very reader friendly. Sometimes there's multiple hands in creating them, and they're already sometimes, ambiguous and contradicting. But hopefully, even on the fly. So be very, very cautious on what you're seeing and make sure that you're paying very close attention to your solicitations now more than ever. It's already a best practice, right? You should already be doing this, but I'm foot stomping this. So no more free rides on renewals, right? If your contract costs more than it's saving, then expect, some more scrutiny or cancellation potentially. And on proposals with all these foreign GSA reforms, the big question is how does this reshape how your proposals get scored and what evaluators now care about? So let's break that down a little further. So evaluation criteria is shifting, right? Here's where it's going to get a bit tactical. So the evaluation criteria is no longer just the checking point for technical, qualifications or relevant past performance. Today's evaluators have increased that with automated screeners. We know this. I hope you know this. There's been some agencies already in the last years that have been implementing, this like automated screener approach, to help score and review your proposals. But very critical, changes here. So quantifiable return on investment cost savings, right? With actual math, like these are things that we probably should already be doing or we should be doing. These are best practices. But again, now the environment is creating so much more of this narrow aperture is narrowing so that we have more of the focus in, cost savings that's quantifiable, qualifiable, right? Speed, efficiency of delivery, ensuring that you're aligning to the mission set, that your proposals are tailored because these tools that are these automated AI tools that are looking and probably screening, of course, your evaluation criteria against the evaluation criteria are going to be, very critical on that front. So you've got to make sure that you use words that are resonating, and that you tie that back, to top priorities based on the mission set of that customer. But overall, so federal priorities, right, within defense readiness, cybersecurity, if that's relevant, public safety, infrastructure resilience, that sort of thing. So when I'm leading, proposals and training individuals in proposal development, this isn't new, right? This before and after example here of how your proposal should be written. This isn't new, but I'm reinforcing this because now this is going to be more critical now more than ever. So, for example, if you're writing, we have a diverse set of capabilities, right? You've got that in your sentence to support, agency needs. Really, how you should be couching the language so that these automated AI tools can pick up and link that back to your evaluation criteria, giving you a potential higher score, is a sentence like this. It's got, much more a robust explanation and context with proof embedded, right? Our proven solution reduced similar program costs by 28% last fiscal year while delivering results 2 months ahead of schedule. So saving time, saving money, supporting DHS border resilience objectives. And so linking that back to the mission set. So that's just an example of, what we should be writing in our proposals already, but now more than ever, having more scrutiny when you're evaluating in-house, right? When you have that red team hat on as an evaluator, how you should be hopefully, making these comments in that, and then also the writers ensuring that they're writing to this level of context. So protecting your current contracts, let's talk more about that. So let's start more on the basic piece, which is often overlooked, right? One of the tactics, which is just talk to your contracting officer. I hope that you have the great relationship with your contracting officer already, where you have built a relationship of trust, right? Don't wait until now to do that. Like I said, start yesterday. Hopefully, there are already relationships that have been forged here with your contracting officer. But I guess the bottom line here is, set a cadence if you haven't yet. Make sure that you're doing checks, short email updates, keep that relationship warm. You want to become part of their rhythm, right? They're humans too. We're all humans here. We're all going through a whole lot in this change. They're going through a whole lot of change on their end as well. And know and understand that they're going to need you more as their partner. And this is a great opportunity for you to really slip right in, take care of the low-hanging fruit for them, help support them, be reliable, be consistent, share the key performance updates so that they're armed for success in case there is scrutiny on their program, and they can go with numbers and data that can help support the key performance updates to that program and the impact that it has back to the mission. And even just ask, how the agency is handling these changes and where you can come in and fill some gaps and help support that. Now, that's for the primes, right? Because you've got that prime relationship with the contracting officer. But if you're a sub, the same rule applies, right? With your prime contractor, do the same. Lean in, ensure that you have that visibility with your prime contractor, with your program managers, with your ops team, from the prime side, and stay on top of it. But really, the main takeaway here is going to be to stay top of mind, continue to be relevant, continue to show up. And in person, of course, is always going to be better. We are in the people business, right? There's a huge difference between a vendor who fills a contract, right, and a partner who helps resolve problems. We, as government contracting representatives in our organizations, to the government, have to be that partner. The agency and the primes need to be this like strategic force together and advocate, for these contracts during all of these changes and these reviews. And, it's not going to be the end of it. In the near future, we're probably going to continue to see these changes. So step into that role if you haven't already. Offer insight on where you can streamline and improve delivery in your own contracts and help support the contracting officer's job in a way that is easier for them, and even help shape this next phase of planning. This is pivotal for you all to jump in, lean in, and then help kind of drive that. So have internal conversations with your growth team, bring in your strategy, the folks that are great at whiteboarding, at wearing those problem solving hats, and come with something clear. It's all about the team effort here within your internal growth organizations and operations teams. So here's where a lot of contractors miss an opportunity when we're building these proactive, right? Bring something to the conversation. When you're having conversations with your contracting officer, when you're, your co-tars or any of those representatives that are, making an influence in-house, make sure that you're having those conversations with very, hopefully some meat right to them in context, and you're bringing some goods to the table. Show that you're paying attention to what's going on as well. And, just again, be that partner for them. Another great way to be proactive is going to be to, create these unsolicited white papers. I know they take a little bit of time, but they're strategic for a reason. White papers are one of the most underutilized, I believe, tools in the federal contracting industry. Use them to frame your contract's relevance through these Doge lens, right? We know what that lens is. So how much money are we saving the government? How does your work directly support the administration priorities? What efficiencies can you prove, through reduced hours, automated workflows, success stories, quantifiable error reductions, those sort of things, right? If you're not sure what to say, work with the delivery teams to pull together this data and build your case, right? No fluff. This has got to hold and stand on its own, where it's going to keep providing that context over. Now, here's where you can really stand out, right? So, how to defend and preserve contracts that you've already won. And so, again, we're still being proactive, right? And potentially, of course, saving your contract before anyone else thinks that it potentially could get cut. So, contracting officers, of course, are under enormous pressure today, right? They're fielding questions from DOJ, from OMB, and internal leadership about their contracts and the relevancy of them, whether they're going to be paused or eliminated or consolidated. So these conversations you have to assume that they're having them behind closed doors, right? So your job is to make their job easier, of course. So how? By arming them, like I said, with exactly the kind of material that they'll need to kind of justify their contract existence when scrutiny is knocking. So this means a clean and compelling one pager, white paper, like I mentioned previously, right? First, the quantifiable value of your contract deliverables, saving time, saving money, efficiency metrics, that sort of thing. Making sure that it's high in that priority mission. You're linking that back, right? We're walking that horse to the water. You're linking the mission back to your contract and ensuring that they're seeing the very key dot to dot point. Um, so those are the main issue. And then the last piece here is, of course, exceeding expectations, right? That's the theme this year, next year, the next few years, is ensuring that we're not just meeting consistently, of course, consistently meeting, but also exceeding, which is backed by performance data, of course. So make sure you're nice and tight with your data and up to date. So data calls, this is Program Manager 101, right? But lean in. There's also escalation paths, right? Some organizations, have actual folks in their organization that help support them in this way. They have full-time legal, they have lobbyists supporting legislative outreach, right? They ever leverage, some relationships, right? We're in the people business. So, you might have some relationships already set up to help support some of the messaging, back to the government. But if you don't, find ways and partnerships to help support that. But you've got leverage here to also continue to help support your contract stability. All right, so let's talk about creative strategies, right, for integrating the scalable growth here during this time. So, of course, you've got to sharpen your BD tools. I have to foot stomp that for sure. So this is not the time to be vague and your pursuit planning or doing that guesswork. I know, like I mentioned, I've been a part of many organizations and I've partnered with many organizations, been subs with many organizations, and time again, this is a part that sometimes it's the easy button. It's just like, let's react. And not a lot of pre-planning happens, right? Let's be real. So this is when you have to really take seriously, now more than ever, this pre-planning and no guesswork. Try to eliminate that. in what you're doing in your actual pipeline and your strategy. So you need to be laser focused. This means investing, of course, in the core tools like price to win. You're making sure your capture team is doing their SWOT analysis, competitive research. I mean, there's some great vendors out there too that help support, and I'm happy to refer you all to a few folks that I work with in industry and have worked with for many years that are in these niche areas, and much necessary, and especially your high top priority pursuits. Hopefully, you do have your top list of the year. Where you are fully, laser focused on those opportunities, and you're investing BMP budgets to, building price models, price to win models, SWOT analysis, more and deeper, doing your black hats, and of course, competitive research and analysis. So what are your true differentiators as well? Making sure that your team understands that and that you all are on the same page, that this is, what truly differentiates you from, anyone else. Understanding where you have lost in the past. This is a great time to do this analysis of why you either lost this bid, and understanding, hopefully you've received some sort of debrief, you've done a hot wash, a lessons learned, kind of looking at again, tightening your capture process, right? That's easy to slip, because it's really like long and ongoing, but having like very methodical milestones and ensuring that you're doing these check-ins as a team and watching that progress and being able to shift as a leader, whatever activities are going on in capture or not going on in capture, early rather than later. Because once it gets into the pre-proposal phase, then, we're a little late already there. But chasing, of course, winnable work, doing your own, internal your probability of win analysis to ensure that, preparing for the surge that's coming. It's coming, yo. The summer is we just, jumped into June, and we're full blown in the summer now, officially, and we're expecting to see the surge. And so until then, this is a great opportunity for you to be doing some of this back end work, at least at a higher level, to understand, how you can reshape your own responses based on some of these lessons, doing some refreshes, hiring maybe a vendor if you don't have a price to win, specialist on your team, understanding the competitive landscape, doing black hats. This is the time to do that. So doing that, but flip side also, once, you've done those reviews, you've looked into that, we're going to see these RFPs drop. They're going to be maybe a little bit different. So we've got to be, available to have the resources. So doing your resource allocation for that. Use the slower period to refine your position and prepare for these proposal assets now, right? Before these floodgates open, because they're coming. So another point is to rethink your market approach. It's also time to rethink that piece where you compete in the competitive landscape instead of just bidding on everything. Focus, right, on the higher value opportunities, higher probability of win, type approach to align to your strengths, to your capabilities, right, to the government's top priorities, so that that there's budget in that and funding in that contract. This means, shifting again, like I mentioned, towards GSA schedule work if you haven't, right? And if you had, put in those updates, moving into more stable agencies that we're seeing today, right? And also capabilities, AI, automation, cybersecurity, right? That's where, the funding is going, of course. And of course, the takeaway that is not about doing more necessarily, it's about doing better and working, of course, smarter. We hear that time and time again, but bettering your capture prep is going to be pivotal so that your proposal teams can be set up for success and have all that goodness that gets the ability to flow in. There's this like capture proposal integration with solution that needs to happen, when a proposal is in that pre-proposal phase or before that. And so ensuring that you have those key milestones in place to do that transition effectively. Okay. So federal budget outlook. So as we delve into, fiscal year 25 federal budget's evident that the administration is, of course, channeling resources into sectors that deem critical for national security and technology advancements. So understanding these shifts is crucial for contractors because it aims us to align our strengths to federal priorities. So defense remains a cornerstone of federal spending, which of course nearly 900 billion allocated, underscoring the emphasis on national security. But simultaneously, significant investment in AI signal, of course, a commitment to maintaining technology superiority, which is going to be incredibly important, especially for those contractors already doing, very similar capabilities today. Infrastructure, funding boosts, indicating a focus on modernizing essential systems, that's going to be very important as well. So for contract adjustments, while certain areas we're going to be seeing this increased funding, other faced reductions, Doge's like 8.5 billion in contract cuts highlighted, a shift away, of course, from programs not aligned with current priorities. But however, like contracts central to defense and AI, have been preserved, which is great. That we have that clear understanding at a minimum right now, reflecting, of course, strategic importance in those areas. Additionally, right, contractors should assess your portfolios to ensure that you align with the funded sectors. So be proactive in identifying your pursuit opportunities in the defense AI and infrastructure, and then reviewing existing contracts for potential risk associated with budget cuts. Hopefully, you're already doing that. That's, just risk assessments. You should be doing that pretty often, especially in this environment right now. So navigating the evolving, federal budget landscape is going to require, of course, your ability to be agile and strategic, and prioritization is going to be very, very important. So staying informed of the funding trends, easy, USA Spending, .gov, FPDS, taking a look at, different NICS codes and the fundings that have been and mods that have been provided to certain contracts that maybe you've been following or similar contracts to some that are yours to kind of see that trend. So those are some really good online open source tools, in the back of your pocket that you can use, that your growth organization should be using, hopefully, good best practices, to maintain and sustain that understanding of the current federal landscape in projects. So explore beyond the usual customers. I know this is scary, and a lot of folks are, maybe in your growth organizations and leadership, might be a little bit resistant, but just keep this in mind. Just hold with me. So there's such a great opportunity to explore beyond the usual suspects, right? So shift away from the over-reliance of, one or two customers that you've been doing lots of work in. If most of the revenue comes from one or two federal agencies, like that's somewhat of a red flag, right? There's vulnerability there. So some agencies, especially those that are not tied to the defense or critical infrastructure, are experiencing more of this aggressive consolidation. So be on the lookout for that. So the first shift in mindset is stop thinking in terms of legacy relationships and start thinking in terms of mission alignment and funding health. Foot stomping that one as well. The second piece, which is target resilient. So well-funded departments, right? The data tells us where the opportunity is: defense, veterans affairs, homeland security, transportation, energy, all have very strong budgets. Technology-heavy agencies like DISA, NIST, and of course even GSAs. So it's not shrinking. We know that. So these agencies also tend to have like longer planning cycles, which is great for us, and be able to predict, and of course sustain multi-year funding, which is fabulous. And that's where you want to put your eggs in. And so, having a pipeline that's predictable, a little more predictable, especially during these unpredictable times. So also match your capabilities to adjacent missions. That's something that you should be doing. Hopefully, that's part of your assessment of your strategy of today and a strategy moving forward. You don't need to reinvent your business. If you've got, just repackage what you already do today with adjacent missions, similar and like customers, similar and like mission sets. For example, a healthcare analytics company, could move into a veteran care or military readiness, right? Working with someone, to support that. A facilities management firm might look at energy resilience projects. So you've got to get very creative. Make sure that you're leveraging your leaders and your internal, folks that are versed in being able to brainstorm and strategize and help support, this type of mindset. So pro tip, use NICS codes as well to do your crosswalk and procurement forecast so that you can identify relevant opportunities. So don't just rely on your past performance alone, of course. So you might be a two capabilities away from just a six-figure, task order if you're a small, very, very small starting company and transitioning into a more robust small commercial market diversification. I know this one's scary too, but it's an option, and I think that it should be considered, right? For companies that have been living and breathing government contractors, the idea of moving into these commercial markets might feel a little bit of a big shift and scary and a huge change. And maybe some in the room might say, what, that doesn't even make sense. But with all the volatility, right, that we're seeing in the government contracting, now is the time to kind of consider this, not as a replacement, but kind of as a hedge. So we've already seen billions cut and delayed. But if you're waiting for the government to stabilize, which, we don't know where things are going as we all see what's happening, right? You could miss, this key window to build resilience in your own growth organization. Diversifying into a commercial sector can help soften the blow when federal opportunities kind of get this pause again or cancellation and things are a little uncertain like they are now. It spreads risk and it gives you your revenue model more of a balance. So consider it. So what's the change here when it comes to commercial? And we're actually working right now with a client as well to help support this piece. But federal versus commercial, let's talk about that real quick. And how am I doing with time? 26? Okay. So the biggest shift is, of course, cultural. In the federal space, compliant mission, cost efficiency. We're in the commercial space. It's more about return on investment, a user experience, speed, and growth. So the sales cycle is going to be also shorter and also less predictable. Like, not that federal contracting is very predictable, but at least we have some sort of schedule. In this case, sometimes it's very reactive in the commercial space. So you need to sell sometimes directly to a sub organization or business unit because they need it now. So just pro tip, you use your GSA as experience for those that do have it as a credibility booster. It's a great way to like leverage that during, this commercial market just diversification. But remember that commercial clients, they want stories, right? They don't want scorecards. They want you to show them the impact in terms of your services did for users, not just how well you executed the task order. So a little bit of a shift there. All right, so turning strength into strategy and leveraging your core capabilities. So before we pivot into new markets and chase new customers and right expand upon these very proactive, hopefully, approaches for you all, we have to ask, what are we already great at? And more importantly, are we telling that story the right way? So doing this introspective, right? So inventory what you do best, map your strengths to, of course, the new customer needs are just a few. And then, of course, package and tell the story. And now it's the time to put that together. Like I said, you've got this lull in what's happening. This is a great time to do that and do this reflective introspection within your organization. One of the biggest procurement shifts, of course, we're going to see and is the GSA optimization. And so it's a safe harbor, right? So like I said, you got to get on this yesterday. Get on it now and optimize it. Look for the modification pieces since I've got great contacts that specialize in this area for those that are interested in hiring potentially a vendor to support or at least guide or coach them through this process. So I'm happy to provide that. But this is definitely the prime opportunity to do it. Strategic partnerships. This is it, people. We're in the people business, right? So you've got to be able to forge even stronger relationships now more than ever, because together is when we're going to be able to continue lifting one another, right? When you're spread thin, when things are uncertain, you're going to rely on these very strong partnerships, hopefully, that you've already built and you haven't built them yet. You need to start, leaning in and building these relationships. So why partnerships and JVs? Federal market is becoming more competitive. The teaming with the right partner will give you the shared past performance, great benefit there, more staff resources potentially if they have a bigger team, expanding geographically your reach, depending, of course, on the contract that you're going after, whether that's a benefit or not, and better chance to meet evaluation criteria on higher value bids, right? We're seeing the evaluation criteria increase. And unfortunately, sometimes we're taking that for granted. So we've got to lean in on that. SBA mentor protege programs, another great opportunity for small business, especially for, of course, small businesses, to, one of the most powerful vehicles is the SBA's Mentor Protege Program. So it allows, of course, small firms to partner with more, versed partners and have more experience and, of course, understand proposal development and pricing strategies. And so once it gets approved through the joint venture, that still qualifies you as a small business. So this is a great opportunity. If you're a small business and you don't have, this sort of partnership, you need to get on that now. We need to start shopping around, networking to find, the best partner, mentor to be in a mentor protege program. Joint ventures, right? Structure and scale. Joint ventures, they take that partnership one step further. This is a formal legal entity, not just, a teammate and with a teaming agreement. It requires a defined structure. So registering on SAM, compliance with SBA or agent or the agency that's, supporting this JV rules. But the payoff is huge. You can pool your bonding capacity. You combine your proposal qualifications. You have access to contract vehicles together. You wouldn't be eligible for solo. So if your JV qualifies as a small business, you get to take full credit on the set aside contracts, right? As long as the majority ownership, control rules are followed and applied. But before you form that JV, align on more just than past performance to support that partnership. Make sure that your partner company shares your same business values, that they're responsive and they have proposal discipline, right? The right partner can help you grow, but the wrong partner can hurt your reputation. So partnerships and vehicles in place, very important strategy here to leverage. Let's dive into proposal development. So writing to win, of course, now. Like I mentioned, a lot of this stuff you should already be doing, but if you are not doing, now more than ever, you should be. So I know we've got a line to, Doge's, core values. I just wrote an article a few weeks ago related to the language of being very cautious on the words diversity and inclusion and all that jazz. So if you haven't read that article, feel free to go and grab it there on our site. But at its core, Doge is driving toward a more efficient, results-driven government. So that means that your proposals actually have to read very much like this, right? Sharing the same values, right? Cost efficiency, automation, national interest, and measurable outcomes. Use hard metrics as well, right? So forget the vague claims of best in class. I don't want to see that in proposals, folks. Please do not use best in class. Do not use, proven team, right? Be a little bit, have a little more depth in the text that you are writing here in your proposals. Be specific. We cut onboarding time by 42%. Our process automation saved 22.3 million, right? So you don't have to say we are a proven team. You don't have to say we're best in class. You show it by demonstrating it directly with, data and some really strong, proof statements. These statements, they'll pass filters and resonate with evaluators. Again, we're putting that, new hat on of evaluation criteria, knowing and understanding that there's AI tools involved. You've got to assume that. And so know that, the quantifiable, qualifiable data proof points are going to be incredibly important. Oops, let me go back one. There we go. So watch your language, literally, right? This is a tricky one, right? Certain words, like I mentioned, diverse or diversity, right? The AI tool is going to ping that. So even when unrelated to DEI policies, it may trigger an issue. So do a list, write a list for your team, proposal writers out there, with your wall of truth, write a list of things that, of words to stay away from. Hopefully you've done that already. I'm happy to share our list, but, make sure that you're scrutinizing the language and you're doing some research in your own Word files during production to ensure that you're not using some of these, triggering words, right? That might create issues for evaluation scoring. And then next is right for both human and AI. We're talking a little bit about that, but foot stomping this, more agencies, of course, are using the AI tools for pre-screening proposals. So think like a search engine, right? Are you using the keywords and outcomes that the government actually is looking for? This goes back to proposal writing 101. Match what your solicitation says. Use the terminology that is being used there. Leverage what's been, I'm not saying parrot, right? The solicitation requirements, I'm saying use the same terminology and be very focused on staying true to what the today's industry is looking for in words or staying away from in words. A great proposal in 2025 isn't gonna it's not gonna thrive to just be compliant. That's not gonna be, that bar's low. Right? So you have to be compliant, period, of course. It needs to be persuasive and performance driven and strategically written for that invite, tailored to that, mission set, tailored to the needs of what the evaluation criteria is calling out. So your writing must adapt to the today times, absolutely. But it also needs to have more of a focused lens. So if you don't already have a review team that is in your organization, holler at us here at Mivia. We're happy to do that for you all as well. And, create a more robust review cycle. But even before that, to be proactive, create a more robust proposal writing approach so that your team is set up for success, right? Before the reviews, during the writing is where you want to catch all that. And then the review should be kind of confirming, right? All right. So beyond the compliance, right? Proposal strategies that win, right? Quantify the benefits of your solution, invest in your proposal and capture analytics. So one of the most underused tools is the internal analytics that we should be tracking. I hope you're tracking. If you're not tracking, please, allocate someone during the slow time to do some of that data gathering if you don't have a specific tool. But tools today, you're able to pull reports, and really see where you're at, but also like benchmark your pricing. Are you analyzing your evaluator debriefs? Earlier on in our discussion, we talked about lessons learned and being able to do that analysis and those hot washes. So that should be happening, right? The best performing teams are using your price to win models. Their past performance is aligned to all the grids and even internal scorecards. We should already have those as default. That's, raising the floor of every proposal that they submit and focusing on quality, which is my next point, to put something that focus on quality over quantity. It's about the quality of your submissions, not the quantity of how many you submit this year and hoping for the best, right? It's tempting to chase the volume because you can make logic out of that, right? Especially when pipelines look a bit thin, especially now that things shifted. I know organizations looked at their pipelines again earlier this year saying, oh no, these are no longer valid. We have to come up with new ones and we haven't been chasing them. And so it's like damage control, right? But you've got to be very strategic on selective winning and selecting those wins. So stay true to your top, opportunities, hopefully top at least your top five for the year. And you're doing some really great work on those. And if others come in, sure, they'll be lower priority. Hopefully you prioritize your pipeline already and having the ranking of priorities, ideally good best practice to do. But, when you submit fewer bids and you have more time for things that truly matter, like better visuals, stronger storytelling, right, deeper understanding, and always making sure that you're writing that out in a way that the evaluation criteria is directly tied to it. So raise your, win rates, raise that internal bar, focus on quality of your submissions, is going to should be the standard of these proposal shops and overall growth organizations. Every proposal should go through a very clear gate and capture process. Full cost modeled, reviewing not just for compliance, but for competitiveness, compellingness, and scoreability, of course. All right, so immediate action plan. Here's some three pillars I want to, share with you all about, being more proactive in the approach that you're doing. And hopefully, you're able to at least pocket a few good nuggets here during our presentation. But I want to leave you with these, pillars here. So protect, adapt, and invest. from a strategic posture that doesn't just react to change, but positions you to win in this change, right? Like we said, offense and defense, always. And I know a lot of companies, after talking to a number of folks in our industry, are in defense mode, but we've got to be in both. You have to have your eye in both and find that balance. So let's move on to some tools that will help you kind of implement each of these right away. So second, of course, is adapt your strategy. Understand, that while some contracts are on pause, they're not gone. Agencies will ramp up again post-review. Use this time to sharpen your BD pipeline. Target agencies with the sustained, funding that is true there. Explore new niches. If indeed you have a team that maybe is doing a certain niche and expand on that, or even transition, like I mentioned, into the commercial markets where your expertise will still hold value. Absolutely. And then, of course, invest. Investment is going to be very important here. Invest in your people, invest in your organization, invest in time. It's tempting to tighten every budget line during uncertainty. And I understand there's been lots of layoffs. Organizations have, sometimes been, very shy and not hiring, closing their hiring, job recs. But your proposal shop is not the place to cut your corners. And I'm not just saying this because I'm a proposal professional, but also because that is where you're going to have the true expertise to help deliver scorable and competitive and high quality proposals, right? It's going to be your proposal team. So I also, there was an article that we wrote under Mivia Leadership related to, the cuts that have been happening and being smarter as organizations to look at other areas to cut in the organization before you begin to cut and lay off folks. Really great read. Go and look at that article. And like I mentioned, investing in the time and the people internally, right? AI tools are increasingly screening proposals. So, if you have, the budget this year to be able to do that, have your own. There's a number of amazing tools out there. I'm happy to share a few and recommend a few, that help support the evaluation of your proposal against an actual AI tool that is tailored to do these evaluations the way the government is doing. So, lean in and see if you can invest. And there's, price ranges for those tools are all over. So, whatever makes sense for your pocket and for the capabilities that you're looking for best for your organization. But nonetheless, see if there's opportunity there to invest. Maybe this year, you don't fly everyone out for, a very expensive leadership, conference. Maybe you do that virtually and you allocate some of those funds into an AI tool. Right, or a vendor, or someone else can come in and help support that type of support. So you need better, more quantifiable narratives. So invest also in time to look at your current boilerplate. Right, I'm never an advocate of copy and pasting. Those boilerplates are simply starting points, and they hold the truth, quote unquote truth, of your organization's, how you all do things, like how do you manage, contracts, certain type of contracts, what you do in certain type of, technologies and capabilities, right? You should have all that documented, but do a refresh. Ensure that you are, doing refresh in language, right? Being very sensitive to the Doge, impact here, but also being sensitive to the fact that it's also not, it's been polished up with your newest, screenshots of your tools and elaboration on, retention and staffing. That's going to be very important as well. So ensuring that you're doing those, narratives that have the quantifiable evidence and proof points within them. This also means expanding your capability through, of course, GSA vehicles. Invest in supporting, your organization and moving in that direction, right? Find, yeah, and we have folks that we work with as well that we can help support during the GSA vehicle onboarding, especially during this refresh. Also forming, joint ventures, invest in time and partnerships and find the best, strategic partners for you all to go in together. Join that SBA's mentor protege program. Right, some good references, SBA.gov, for your JV, and some resources that I'm going to share with you all, and like proposal writing, do's and don'ts resources and stuff if you all are interested in that. All right. So resources to leverage, right? We talked about white paper. So I'm happy to share white paper template. You can visit our website, later this month, which we'll post some of these resources directly on there that you can, just grab and go. You can follow us on Mivia Leadership as well, where you'll be able to also be on top of, some of these updates that are happening in industry, and be able to leverage, some of these cheat sheets and like, capture strategy checklist if you don't have one already. It's a great start to one, proposals, like I said, do's and don'ts, and some federal resource links to help support, language on the, executive orders if you need some. But yeah, make sure that you all are there when we're done here, indeed, if you need that. All right. Well, I want to thank everyone. I know we did really great here. We're almost like just a few minutes and from the top of the hour here, but thank you again very much. And of course, if you all would love to have more discussions, and I'm going to take a look here at our chat to see if there's anything in there, but schedule a call, a discovery call, free through 30 minutes. Let's have a great chat. Let's catch up. If we haven't caught up already, if we haven't chatted in a long time, let's do that as well. But let's find some time, to continue to have these invigorating conversations, because together as an industry is how we're going to, keep the sanity and all these changes that are happening, and support one another as industry partners, right? Like I said, we're in the people business, so it's important for us to stay connected and see maybe how maybe a leadership can help you all directly. Okay, all right, let me stop sharing here, and then let's jump into, if I can get a hold of it. And again, this will be available to folks here as a recording, and as well as slides for those. And if you can manage to find a time and date for us to get together, we will definitely do that. But I don't see any questions here directly, but thank you so much, y'all, and hope to talk to you soon. Have a wonderful rest of your week. Thank you so much, Dennis. Good to see you. And or at least, see your name and face here. I saw your call come in, so I'll give you a call later. But wonderful. Thank you all. Have a great rest of your day. Bye-bye.